Do you believe violence is a prerequisite for the attainment of the Negro's goals? Well, that question isn't really for, what will happen when and if all these Negro soldiers return home from Vietnam and find poverty remains as well as lack of job opportunities? Revolution, violence, or silence? It ain't gonna be silence. The question of whether or not violence is going to be used is not a question for the black community. It's a question for white America. Because white America is the one who's used violence. For 400 years, we have been the recipients of violence. We have never lynched, we have never shot, we've never burnt a church, we've never beaten people, we've never taken them to jail. That is the question for white America. The real question is, can she civilize herself before we get ready to civilize her? Good afternoon. I was hoping to see Mr. Alcindor dunk one of his shots, but the white folk got together and stopped him from doing it. That's just a cutback in black power. We got a setback. Wanted to read an article today which I wrote for the Massachusetts Quarterly entitled Towards Black Liberation. The article deals theoretically with black power as a concept, and then it outlines programmatically the implementation of that concept. It deals with the question of integration as it's practiced in this country and comes to the conclusion that integration is a subterfuge for the maintenance of white supremacy, and dismisses integration as any real way for black people to have equality in this country. It further goes on to attack the coalition theorist and the people who are the major exponents of it, notably Mr. Bayard Rustin and his concept of coalitions. We want to state here that while we're not opposed to coalitions, we're opposed to coalitions at this time because we do not think that they will benefit black people anything. The paper then moves on to point out the difference between individual acts of racism and institutionalized racism, and the importance to black people of turning their attention towards institutionalized racism. Now, I know that the press will be incapable of dealing with the article because it's on an intellectual level. As they were incapable of dealing with the Conference for the Survival of Black People yesterday, and as they will be incapable of dealing with all other intellectual matters. But however, since you are a university crowd, we hope you will be able to deal with the paper on its intellectual level. One of the most pointed illustrations of the need for black power as a positive and redemptive force in a society degenerating into a form of totalitarianism is to be made by examining the history of distortion that the concept has received in the national media of publicity. In this debate, as in everything else that affects our lives, black people are dependent on and at the discretion of forces and institutions within the white society which have little interest in representing us honestly. Our experience with the national press has been that where they've managed to escape a meretricious special interest in get-whitey sensationalism and race war mongering, individual reporters and commentators have been conditioned by the developing racism of the society to the point where they are incapable even of objective observation and reporting of racial incidents, much less the analysis of ideas. But this limitation of vision and perception is an inevitable consequence of the dictatorship of definition, interpretation, and consciousness, along with the censorship of history that the society has inflicted upon black people and consequently upon itself. Our concern for black power addresses itself directly to this problem, the necessity for black people to reclaim our history and our identity from the cultural terrorism and depredation of self-justifying white guilt. To do this, we shall have to struggle for the right to create our own terms through which to define ourselves and our relationship to the society, and to have these terms recognized. This is the first necessity of a free people and the first right that any oppressor must suspend. The white fathers of American racism knew this instinctively, it seems, as is dictated by the continuous record of distortion and omission in their dealings with the red and black men. Now in SNCC, we feel that the importance of definition is uppermost in psychological warfare. As a matter of fact, Mr. Camus, on the very first page of The Rebel, points out that when a slave stops accepting the definitions imposed upon him by his master, then and only then does he begin to move towards his liberation. And that has been some of the problems that black people and other minorities have suffered in this country. We have been defined by white Western society. Note, I define it white Western society, never white Western civilization. That's a misnomer at best, a lie when you get right down to it. Yeah. And the importance of definition works very hard against us. Let me give you an example. You ever watch television? You see the red man and the white man are having a fight. And the red man is winning, so the white man sends for the cavalry. And the cavalry come out, and they're riding very white and very proper. And they get off their horses, and they blow their horns, and they get their guns, they load them up, and they shoot. And they ride back to the fort, and there's a white woman standing outside. She says, "Oh, what happened?" And a dashing lieutenant says, "We had a victory. We killed all the Indians." Now, when the reverse happens, when the red man wins the battle and beats up the white man, there's one left hanging on a horse, and he rides to the fort. She says, "Oh, what happened?" "Those dirty Indians, they massacred us." And the importance of that is very important, because a victory is not as honorable as is a massacre. And these poor red people will never win a victory because they'll always win a massacre. And the connotation of a massacre is something foul. I guess the difference is that in a victory you're shot to death, in a massacre you're cut to death, and if we would die, we want to be shot to death rather than cut to death. Another example of that would be today on television. You ever see the editorial twins of America, Huntley and Brinkley? They're always sitting in judgment of SNCC. If we ever judged them, they'd flunk. But anyway, they come on TV and they're talking about Vietnam. They say, "Today, filthy, dirty, communist, filthy rebel forces threw Molotov cocktails and wounded 17 civilians." And there's a flash, The next cat comes on. "In the meantime, our good GIs have been bombing the hell out of North Vietnam." And, so that it is clearly a question of definitions, and it's crystal clear in our minds at SNCC that in this day and age, black people are going to define themselves as they see fit, use the terms that they want to use, and have their oppressors, white America, recognize those terms. We will not be defined or prescribed. In the same way that the Southern apologists for the Jim Crow Society have so obscured, muddied, and misrepresented the record of the Reconstruction period until it is almost impossible to tell what really happened, their contemporary counterparts, the American press, is busy doing the same thing with the recent history of the civil rights movement. In 1964, for example, the National Democratic Party, led by Lyndon Buffoon Johnson, Now, we've called Lyndon a buffoon, and people got upset about it. See, they got upset because they didn't know what a buffoon is. A buffoon is a court jester, and his job is that when things are going bad in the kingdom, to tell everybody it's going okay, to lie to them, in essence. Have you ever seen him on TV when he talks about peace? "Every night before I go to bed, I ask myself, what have I done to preserve peace?" Bombs away. Well, anyway, in 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson and H. Humphrey, there's another one for you. In the black community, we call him Handkerchief Head Humphrey. Now, a handkerchief head is someone who is more obsequious and more unctuous than an Uncle Tom. He is an unconditional yes man. Did you dig back in January or February when Lyndon Johnson was preparing his State of the Johnson message to the Union? It had to be that. Well, if you notice, the cameras were focused on Lyndon, and Handkerchief Head was right in the background. And everything Lyndon said, he has developed frog-like features. Every time Johnson says jump, he says, how high, boss man? Well, anyway, in 1964, these two cats, LBJ and HHH, cynically undermined the efforts of Mississippi's black population to achieve some degree of political representation. I'm speaking now of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party challenge that took place in Atlantic City, September 1964, at the National Democratic Party Convention. Yet, whenever the events of that convention are recalled by the press, one sees only that version fabricated by the press agents of the Democratic Party. A year later, we're speaking now about the challenge that the same party, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, took to the Congress and asked that the same law invoked against Mr. Powell be invoked against a racist Mississippi congressman. A year later, the House of Representatives, in an even more vulgar display of political racism, made a mockery of the political rights of Mississippi's blacks when it failed to unseat the Mississippi delegation to the House, which had been elected through a process which had systematically the active support of non-blacks. Oh, that's very easy. The power to disrupt is the most powerful power that we have at our possessions. We're not going to get those demands by any means necessary. That's the same thing that a white boy said during the American Revolution. He said, give me liberty or give me death. Everybody claps for that. I do believe that black people can take control of their own communities. There's no reason for hunky cops to be in Watts. No reason. Seems to me that black people are asking to control the police force in the communities where they live. We don't patrol in the suburbs. We don't want you in the ghettos. And if you can't get those demands, we're just going to have to move on to TCB. Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel that your cause might be more forceful if you went to Vietnam and upon first-hand inspection of the problem, made your decision whether to continue your present course of opposition to the war and the alleged discrimination of it against the Negro? We have had several people in the organization who have been to Vietnam, have made those investigations, and have returned. I speak from an organizational point of view, never an individual point of view. We know what's going down in Vietnam. We don't need to go. Because anytime the man is drafting 30% of us, that's black urban removal. Yeah. And we're just not concerned about the Vietnam War per se. We are concerned about the survival of black people in this country, and that we cannot survive if we go fight some yellow man in Vietnam who ain't never called us nigger. Yeah. Dig it. Dig it. Secondly, I don't see how anybody can ask black people to go fight for the liberation of certain people across the seas when we don't even know what liberation is all about here in this country. It is crystal clear to us in SNCC that the people who are fighting the war in Vietnam is fighting a war for the control of the resources of Vietnam so they can get next to Red China. That's their war, not ours. Let them fight it. 5 years ago, Vietnam used to export rice. It was the world's leading exporter of rice. Today, she buys rice from the United States of America. But let me get you some quotes. This is a book entitled Vietnam, Vietnam by Mr. Felix Green. I want you to dig something. I want to read a quote concerning the Vietnam War, which was made August 4th, 1953, in Seattle, Washington, before a conference of U.S. state governors. I'll read the quote, and then I'll tell you who said it. Quote, "Now let us assume that we lost Indochina. Now, we weren't fighting the war then. The French were fighting it for us. We were giving them 80% of it. The tin and tungsten that we so greatly value from that area would cease coming. So when the United States votes $400 million to help that war, we're not voting a giveaway program. We are voting for the cheapest way that we can to prevent the occurrence of something that would be of a most terrible significance to the United States of America. Our security, our power, and ability to get certain things we need from the riches of the Indo-Chinese territory and from Southeast Asia." That quote was made by the white leader of the world then, President Dwight Eisenhower. But now we would say Dwight wasn't really too smart. As a matter of fact, he couldn't even really articulate well and said whatever came to his mind. In our community, because of his ability to articulate, we used to call him the white Joe Louis. "Duck, glad I win. I'll be right home, mama." Yeah. In Vietnam, we ain't going. We ain't going. The decision to kill is the highest decision that a man can make. It must be an individual choice. It cannot be a mass choice. I will not let anybody define for me who my enemy is. My fellow Americans, your enemy is the Viet Cong. Go kill them. Junk. That's a lot of junk. I will decide who my enemy is, and I will decide when to kill him. If Westmoreland, if Russ, if McNamara, if Johnson think the Viet Cong are their enemies, let them go kill them. Let them go kill them. Let them go kill them. If the veterans for foreign wars didn't have enough and they want to go back for some more, let them go to Vietnam. Let them go to Vietnam. If the American Legion feels that the Vietnamese are their enemies, let them go and bomb the Vietnamese. I will maintain my humanity. I will not kill when someone tells me to kill. Mine is not to do and die. Mine is but to reason why. And I'm going to do that till I die. We have grown enough strength to say that, that Vietnam War is for the birds. Linda Bird, Lady Bird, Luda Bird, Humphrey. Let the birds go take care of it. We're going to sit here and watch. I'm going to smoke cigarettes and dig Captain Kangaroo on TV. Do you believe Adam Powell has acted improperly as a congressman? Nope. What are your views on interracial marriage? Yeah. I don't know about this interracial thing, but this marriage thing makes me do flips. I think maybe in SNCC you might slide with that interracial thing, but that marriage thing, we're against that. We're for interracial, we're against marriage. Now, seriously speaking, I think that the question of marriage is an individual question. And that is up to the individuals who are getting married. I just hope with the rates of rising divorce that they find happiness and love in a world as confused as it is today. American society as it's constituted today is capable of acting civilized to people who are not white. The country is so ingrained with its racism that it doesn't even recognize the existence of non-white people. That's clear in all of its educational standards. Nobody comes alive around the world until some hunky discovers you. So red people were living on this country and they didn't make anything until a dumb hunky named Columbus comes over here and discovers them. Poof, you're alive. Yeah. The same thing is true about Africa. Rhodesia wasn't happening until Cecil Rhodes came along, named the country Rhodesia, and then it was discovered. So he can steal our diamonds and golds. Get to him. So that if America can destroy its racism, then that question becomes pertinent. The question is, can America destroy its racism internally? We don't think it's possible. We think it will have to be destroyed by black people inside this country and by non-white people externally. That will be the only hope for this country. I tell you, I'm not against that, see? But I'm just saying that our sweat built this country, and we're not going to leave it for white folk. Before we go, we'll burn it to the ground. Burn it to the ground. What did you think of John F. Kennedy? Did you know that John F. Kennedy in 1959 went across the seas to Europe and asked England not to grant its independence to Mr. Chetty Jagan's Republic of Guinea? Because he was afraid that if Jagan was elected, he would have to fight the question of communism inside the country and he would be unable to win. So he went across the seas, one white man, and stopped the whole country from getting its independence for a year. That's what I think of John F. Kennedy. Hell out. If she got out, there'd be no aggressors. I don't see how I could be an aggressor in my own country. Have you ever seen The Folly of a True Stork? I have a house. It's my house. Some man comes into my house and begins to fight me for my house. And he says, wait a minute, we got to have a truce. While he's inside my